How far would you go to destroy the happiness of those you envy? What sinister secrets lie hidden behind the veil of friendship and tradition? Tonight, we dive deep into a chilling Indonesian horror story where domestic bliss turns into a terrifying battleground against a relentless, insidious evil. This is the tale of the Dasim Djinn, an ancient entity whose sole purpose is the calculated, systematic destruction of married couples. It doesn't want souls, it wants heartache. But how did this vengeful spirit find its way to Salma, a devout, pious woman raised in a madrasa, and her new husband, Arman? The answer, as you'll soon discover, is more shocking than any possession. The story began with scenes of profound joy. The wedding of Salma and Arman. As prayers and blessings filled the mosque for the newly wedded pair, an unseen figure moved in the shadows. This mysterious individual slipped into an ancient, dusty library and retrieved a formidable old book. Faint whispers could be heard as they handled the volume, a clear sign that this was not a book of good things, but a tome laced with dark, forbidden magic. From its pages, this individual meticulously tore out two specific leaves. Back at the mosque, the ceremony concluded. Salma, now introduced to the community, sat before Arman, exchanging customary signs of respect, followed by the obligatory photo session. While posing for pictures with the elders, Salma began searching the crowd for Hassan. Hassan was the revered religious teacher who had raised her in the madrasa. He had practically served as her father, and was the one who performed their marriage. She eventually found Hassan speaking with her friend, Dika, playfully suggesting it was time for Dika to consider marriage too, prompting a shy blush from Dika. Salma called Hassan over for a picture, a final moment of peace before the darkness descended. Fast forward several months, and we learn that Salma was now pregnant. Yet, this blissful news was immediately soured by a new reality. Salma was being haunted by horrifying nightmares. To find stability during this crucial time, she and Arman decided to temporarily move in with Arman's mother. This move ensured that Arman's mother, Lasri, could look after Salma while Arman was busy at his office. But things were already deeply unsettling. While Salma was alone, meticulously packing her belongings, she heard a sound. Suddenly, the shower in the washroom spontaneously turned on. She cautiously approached, found the room empty, and steeled her nerves enough to turn the faucet off. It was then she noticed the holy water. This was water blessed by Hassan himself, which she had carefully placed throughout the house for protection. The moment Salma picked up the bowl, the clear, pure water instantly turned jet black. Terrified by this visible sign of corruption, the bowl slipped from her grasp and crashed to the floor. She scrambled out of the washroom, fear gripping her. As she rushed out, she was startled by her best friend, Indri. Indri and Salma were childhood friends who had studied at the same madrasa. Indri teased Salma, suggesting she had been too hasty to start a family, quitting her job just months after marriage. Salma, however, had no regrets, certain of Arman's unwavering support. Arman arrived, and they loaded their belongings into the car. As they drove away from their old home, a horrifying realization hit us. A dark shadow was visibly moving through the empty house. This confirmed the dreadful truth. A malevolent force was definitely stalking Salma and Arman. They soon arrived at Lasri's house, where they were greeted by Sumi, Lasri's dedicated caretaker. Salma had not spent much time with her mother-in-law before the wedding, so she was entering unfamiliar territory. Her first instinct was to pull back the heavy curtains to let light into the room, but Lasri sharply stopped her. Lasri preferred to keep the curtains drawn at all times, citing a distrust of the neighbors and a desire for absolute privacy. Salma found this eccentricity quite strange. Upstairs, in her new room, Salma tried again, drawing the curtains to welcome the daylight. Arman joined her, and they shared a beautiful moment of connection. Their peaceful evening was interrupted when Indri arrived, explaining that Lasri had insisted she stay for dinner, which Indri happily accepted. Salma was pleased by this gesture. After dinner, Arman walked Indri out. Meanwhile, Salma sat alone, engrossed in reciting the Holy Quran, specifically the Ayatul Kursi. Halfway through the powerful verses, Arman came back into the room, told her he was exhausted, and immediately lay down to sleep. When Salma finished her recitation and turned to speak to Arman, she was completely shocked. The bed was empty. Just as panic swelled in her chest, the real Arman walked through the door. Salma was shaken to her core. She desperately requested that they perform the salat, prayer, together. Arman, who was increasingly preoccupied and exhausted by his new business ventures, wasn't keen, but Salma insisted. They prayed together, an important ritual that Salma felt was slipping away from them. That night, after they finally slept, Salma was jolted awake by a sense of deep unease. Outside, the rain lashed down, and lightning illuminated the room. She looked up, and horror flooded her senses. Drops of blood were seeping through the ceiling. The crimson droplets grew in intensity, flowing down until they splattered directly onto her pregnant belly. The stream of blood intensified, and Salma screamed in terror. And then she woke up. It was just a nightmare. Everything seemed normal, and not wanting to wake Arman so late, she lay back down. But as she settled, she felt something move beneath the sheets. It felt like someone had climbed in with them. She yanked the sheet away, only to see a horrifying, demonic figure. Her piercing scream finally awoke Arman. He gently calmed her, urging her to recite the istighfar, asking forgiveness. The next morning, Salma confided in Hassan about the strange events. Hassan, in turn, advised Salma, Arman, and Lasri that they should hold a special prayer ceremony to mark the completion of her 4th month of pregnancy. Hassan even offered to come himself and lead the prayers. Arman readily agreed, but his mother, Lasri, was noticeably unhappy. Given her desire for solitude and her lack of interaction with neighbors, she dreaded having people in her house. Since it was a spiritual obligation, however, she had no choice. When the neighbors arrived, their hushed conversations revealed a key detail. Lasri was not known for being particularly devout or Islamic-minded, a fact her neighbors knew well. Even more strangely, Lasri refused to join the ceremony. Sumi, the caretaker, informed Salma that Lasri had suddenly become unwell and required Sumi's constant attention. Salma accepted this explanation, perhaps too easily. As the prayer ceremony commenced, the lights suddenly began to flicker. Just as the lights stabilized, a massive downpour began outside, accompanied by thunder and blinding flashes of lightning. Everyone was astonished by the suddenness of the storm. Lasri, despite being sick, rushed out of her room. She saw her patio furniture getting soaked by the rain and became frantic. Several neighbors, forgetting the prayer ceremony, stopped their recitations to help Lasri bring the furniture inside. Salma watched this spectacle with growing resentment. Lasri appeared perfectly healthy, yet she had skipped the prayers for her own grandchild. If you're finding this chilling, hit that like button and tell me in the comments below, what is the strangest thing you've ever witnessed happen during a storm? The prayers finally concluded late that night, and the neighbors departed. Salma went outside to bid farewell to Hassan. As she stood alone, one of the neighbors, a woman named Dia, approached. Salma thanked her for attending. Dia then remarked that Lasri didn't seem too happy about their presence, noting that it was their arrival that led to the furniture being outside and potentially ruined. At that exact moment, Salma spotted Lasri angrily speaking to Arman, stressing that there was no need to ever organize another prayer event, complaining that all the furniture had been ruined. Salma was deeply disheartened. Dia offered comforting words before heading home. The next morning, Salma was preparing Arman's lunch. Lasri entered the kitchen and saw Salma's meal, plain, boiled vegetables. Lasri was taken aback, saying Arman never liked food this bland. Salma explained they were eating healthier, specifically to lower Arman's cholesterol. Lasri immediately made cutting, passive-aggressive remarks, suggesting that Salma was trying to control Arman. Although Salma found this strange, Lasri never said anything directly to her. She only muttered quietly enough for Salma to clearly hear. Not wanting conflict, Salma reluctantly agreed to help Lasri cook. Lasri then prepared a delicious, richer meal for Arman and sent it along with Salma. Salma took both lunches, her boiled meal, and Lasri's elaborate dish, to Arman's office. Upon arrival, she noticed a large poster featuring the company's brand ambassador, a stunning, modern woman. As Salma approached Arman's room, she saw this very woman exiting his office. A new sense of suspicion pricked at Salma. She entered the office and found Indri there too. Arman finished his discussion with Indri and then approached Salma. He was confused to see two lunchboxes. Salma explained one was hers and one was his mother's. Arman said it worked out perfectly, as he had a late meeting and could save the second meal for later. After Arman ate, Salma spent some time chatting with Indri. Indri asked how she was coping with Lasri. Salma admitted that while she didn't have major issues, she sensed Lasri was hiding a secret, and her occasional remarks felt hurtful. Salma chose to ignore these things, not wanting to escalate conflict, especially since Arman was heavily stressed trying to make his new business succeed. Indri confirmed Arman was indeed under a lot of pressure. Back at the house, Salma was working on a small art project. She heard noises outside but tried to ignore them. Then, a pebble struck the house. She went outside, saw nothing, and quickly bolted the door, unnerved. Another pebble hit. It sounded like the noise was coming from the attic. She cautiously climbed the stairs to investigate. Shining her light into the darkness, she suddenly saw a horrifying demon. She stumbled backward in shock, her hand knocking a priceless, expensive vase off a pedestal. The crash brought Lasri running. Salma apologized profusely for breaking the vase and frantically explained the noises from the attic, which were still faintly audible. Lasri simply told her to wait until Arman returned. Just then, Dika called. She had brought some supplies for Salma's art project. Salma went outside and called Sumi to bring the supplies in. While Salma gathered the remaining items, Dika noticed her hand was bleeding, a cut she sustained from the broken vase. Dika immediately applied a small first aid tape. Lasri watched this interaction from afar, clearly displeased by the intimacy between Salma and Dika. Before Salma could fully explain how she was cut, Arman arrived. He asked Dika where her delivery man was, and she explained he was busy. Arman then casually mentioned to Salma that Dika was perhaps a little too caring, implying a fondness. Salma didn't appreciate the joke. Dika was truly her good friend. Arman then went up to check the attic. As he peered into the darkness, faint whispering sounds erupted. Arman shouted in surprise, making Salma panic. Moments later, Arman returned, assuring Salma he was fine. He claimed there was nothing up there but a few mice. Salma breathed a sigh of relief. The next morning, as Arman was leaving for the office, he asked Salma not to bother bringing lunch. He said he would order something out. After he left, Salma spotted something gleaming on the floor, a single earring. A chilling suspicion crept into her heart. Could this have fallen from Arman's shirt? She picked it up, her mind racing. At that moment, Dia arrived. She had brought over some homemade food, explaining it was too much for her to eat alone. Salma tasted it and happily accepted the spicy dish, saying she and Arman both loved spicy food. Dia invited Salma to visit her house soon, an invitation Salma accepted. Inside, Salma gave the food to Sumi, saying they would eat Dia's spicy meal for lunch and Lasri's dinner later. She instructed Sumi to prepare 2 boxes. Salma then asked Sumi a peculiar question. Had Sumi ever felt anything strange in the house? Sumi responded that feelings of unease were common during early pregnancy. Even Lasri experienced them when she was pregnant, and assured Salma everything would normalize soon. Sumi effectively sent Salma away, dismissing her concerns. Salma went to get ready. Seeing the earring again, a deep wave of insecurity washed over her. She felt she was no longer attractive enough for Arman, fearing he was losing interest. She applied heavy makeup, trying to regain her confidence. Downstairs, Lasri noticed the food boxes and asked where they came from. Salma gave Dia's address. Salma then took one of the food boxes and drove to Hassan's madrasa. She told Hassan that nothing felt normal. The strange occurrences were still happening. Hassan, still believing the root cause was stress from the marriage and pregnancy, advised her to discuss these feelings directly with Arman. Salma offered him the food. Hassan happily opened the box and immediately recoiled, uttering, "Astaghfirullah, I seek forgiveness from God." Inside, the food was rotten and filled with insects. Salma was horrified. Realizing that Arman's lunchbox likely contained the same ruined food, Salma was deeply embarrassed. That night, when Arman returned, Salma confronted him and Lasri. She believed the food must have been spoiled due to some mistake, asserting that it was perfectly fine when Dia gave it to her. Arman sternly told her not to dwell on the matter. Salma, however, insisted someone must have swapped the food. Arman was furious that Salma was implicitly accusing his mother, Lasri, or Sumi. He angrily stormed off to the room, leaving Salma to weep alone. Outside, Arman sat, contemplating smoking again, a habit he had given up for Salma. Suddenly, he heard noises from above. Lasri came to him, advising him to talk openly with Salma. A communication gap between a husband and wife was destructive. Meanwhile, Salma looked at her reflection, fixated on her pregnant belly, feeling increasingly unattractive. At the same time, the torn pages of the evil book were shown, and the strange letters inscribed on them began to glow ominously. Then, Salma heard Arman's voice outside, distinctly saying words like cute and beautiful to someone. She assumed he was on the phone and rushed out to hear better, but the courtyard was empty. Sumi appeared, warning Salma not to be outside so late in that condition. Sumi reassured her that Arman was inside, and then Sumi went out to dispose of the trash. As Sumi reached the roadside, the streetlights began to flicker wildly and died. Frightened, she tried to hurry back inside. The light suddenly flared back to life, revealing a terrifying black shadow behind her. The shadow grew larger, moving menacingly toward Sumi. Panicked, she rushed back into the house. Inside, Salma realized Arman was asleep. His phone kept buzzing with notifications. As she reached for it, Arman instinctively grabbed her hand. He dismissed the messages as office business and said he would check them in the morning. Salma sadly retreated to her side of the bed, desperately wanting closeness, but Arman claimed he was too exhausted. The paranoia returned. She must not be beautiful enough. He must be drawn to someone else. The next morning, Salma poured Hassan's blessed water into several glasses and placed them in corners throughout the house. Lasri called Sumi, admitting she was starting to believe Salma's fears. She asked Sumi to discreetly investigate Dia, who she was, and where she actually lived. Lasri also kept a close eye on Salma. Salma tried to work on her art project, but felt exhausted, opting instead to read about the symptoms of pregnancy. Suddenly, her small office room began to shake violently. Cracks appeared on the walls. The room seemed to be shattering. She screamed in sheer terror, only to find the room instantly normal again, save for her small, fragile art project, which had fallen apart. Shaken, Salma immediately called Arman. She knew he had a crucial meeting and had specifically asked not to be disturbed, but her fear overcame her. Arman answered, sounding annoyed. When she told him her small art project had broken, his anger flared. He reminded her about the importance of his meeting. The phone connection faltered. Neither could hear the other. Then, Arman distinctly heard Salma's voice say, "She never thinks about him, and she hopes his business fails." Arman was utterly stunned. He was so distracted that Indri had to call his name from behind him. Salma, unaware of the demonic manipulation, was simply confused about the failed call. Dika arrived to pick up some art supplies and asked Salma if things were okay between her and Arman. Salma deflected the question. Suddenly, more noises erupted from the attic. Dika ascended the stairs to check. A flurry of birds burst out, surrounding Salma. Dika managed to shoo them outside. The commotion brought Lasri and Sumi rushing in. At the same time, Arman, distraught by Salma's hateful words, sat alone. Indri approached, offering him a cigarette, telling him it was better to start smoking again than to overthink things. She asked about Salma. Initially reluctant, Arman eventually confessed everything to Indri. After delivering the art supplies, Dika left, cautioning Salma to be careful. Moments later, Dia returned. Lasri, standing in the kitchen making tea, couldn't see Dia but strained to hear their conversation. Dia told Salma that emotional instability was normal during pregnancy. Salma then asked if Dia was married. Dia revealed that she was married, but her husband had suddenly become emotionally distant. Dia initially blamed herself, but later learned another woman was involved. Hearing this, Salma's anxiety about Arman intensified. That night, Salma nervously called Indri, asking if Arman would be home late. Indri confirmed the meeting was still underway, and that Arman would be late. Salma asked if he was alone. Indri assured her other employees were present. Then Salma asked the damning question. Was the beautiful brand ambassador, the woman from the poster, going to be there? Indri said the brand ambassador rarely visited the office. The seed of doubt had blossomed into full-blown panic. Salma quickly prepared dinner and drove straight to Arman's office. As she entered, she saw the woman in the red dress heading upstairs. Salma chased after her, but when she reached the top floor, the woman was gone. Moments later, she saw the woman exit Arman's office and rush straight downstairs. Salma called out, but the woman ignored her. This confirmed every fear. Salma's patience evaporated. She rushed down the stairs after her, nearly tumbling down in her haste. She barely caught herself. Indri appeared, and Salma angrily accused her of lying and covering up Arman's infidelity. Salma demanded to speak to Arman. She found him outside. She challenged him about the woman, but Arman was genuinely confused. First, the accusation that she broke the house when it was fine, and now this woman he had barely seen. He asked Salma what she truly wanted. Salma then brought up the phone call from the night before. Arman, increasingly bewildered and frustrated, said he had no idea what she was talking about. He urged her not to make a scene. He took her to the car and asked flat out, did she want them to leave his mother's house, or did she want him to quit his job? Salma, tears streaming, said she only wanted him to love her and not pursue other women. Arman lost control. Enraged, he demanded to know which woman she kept referencing. His excitement was so great that he nearly caused a traffic accident. The shock of the near crash silenced them both. Simultaneously, the nefarious text on the stolen pages pulsed and glowed again, signifying the black magic was tightening its grip. Back at the house, Salma looked in the mirror and saw a terrifying, distorted version of herself. All her beauty had seemingly vanished. In reality, she looked fine. Arman, still furious, slept on the sofa. He awoke suddenly, seeing Salma standing over him. She immediately lunged and began attacking him. He struggled to restrain her until, suddenly, he woke up. It had been another terrifying dream. The next day, we find Sumi returning home from the market. She saw Dia walking toward her own house, a house that looked decrepit, abandoned, and poorly maintained. Suspicious, Sumi followed her. As Sumi was about to leave, Dia's voice came from inside, asking if she was looking for someone. Sumi approached the doorway and tried to peek inside. Suddenly, Dia's face transformed into a horrifying, demonic visage. Sumi fled in terror. Back inside, Lasri was attempting to reconcile with Salma, urging her to fix things with Arman. But Salma was bitter. She snapped that Arman was too busy with his affair, and that Lasri would naturally take her son's side, not her daughter-in-law's. Before the argument could escalate, the doorbell rang. Salma went to answer it. Sumi rushed to Lasri, frantic. She told Lasri about the house, explaining that Dia didn't live there. It was abandoned. She had checked with neighbors and the security guard. No one named Dia lived in the area. Lasri and Sumi were deeply troubled. Salma returned, announcing that Dia was here to make them some tea. Sumi was beside herself with fear. Lasri told Salma to start the tea and then went to the window to look for Dia. Suddenly, a terrifying guttural voice screamed at Lasri to stay away from all this. Lasri panicked, unable to comprehend what was happening. Dia then said goodbye to Salma and left. Salma came inside, followed by Lasri, who desperately tried to speak to her. Salma ignored her. Lasri then noticed the glasses of blessed water Salma had placed around the house. They were all pitch black. Lasri tried to talk sense into Salma, but Salma simply turned on the stove and walked away. Lasri moved to turn off the flame, but the burner suddenly roared to life. Startled, Lasri knocked over a pot of boiling water, severely scalding her foot. Her screams brought Salma and Sumi running, but Lasri noted something chilling. Salma arrived from a different direction than expected. Lasri was now afraid of Salma. Arman was furious over the incident. He immediately blamed the fact that a guest, whom he assumed was Dika, was in the house. The arguments between Arman and Salma intensified. Sumi, weeping, took the blame, saying if she had been more careful, Lasri wouldn't have been injured. Lasri, however, insisted it was an accident. Salma angrily left the room. Deeply worried, Lasri sent Sumi out that very night to meet Hassan. Lasri had already spoken to him. He was to provide more blessed water to counteract the bad influence on Salma. Sumi headed out. As she walked, she heard faint, chilling whispers chasing her. Suddenly, the street seemed to empty. Everyone vanished. She sensed the entity was near. She managed to reach the bus stop. A terrifying, shadowy figure materialized, causing the lights behind her to flicker wildly. Sumi backed away in pure dread. Stepping backward, focused entirely on the demon shadow, she retreated directly into the path of an oncoming bus. Sumi died instantly in a horrific accident. Meanwhile, Hassan was in the madrasa library, deeply concerned after Lasri's call. He, too, was worried about Salma. He searched through books, eventually pulling out the very volume shown at the beginning of the story, the one missing 2 pages. The library lights flickered, and the same shadowy Djinn appeared. Hassan immediately began reciting the Ayatul Kursi, and the demon vanished. The entire family gathered at the hospital. Lasri was devastated by Sumi's death, blaming herself. If she hadn't sent Sumi to Hassan, she would still be alive. Lasri urgently tried to convince Arman that Salma's terrifying experiences were real, and that Sumi's death was connected. Arman refused to believe it. Lasri resolved to tell Salma everything. She began to explain the strange, invisible nature of Dia. Salma was immediately offended, convinced Lasri was calling her crazy. She refused to accept that Lasri hadn't seen Dia. Enraged, Salma rushed home, grabbed the bottle of holy water, and drove to Dia's house. This time, Dia's house looked normal, with lights on. Not at all like the dilapidated structure Sumi had seen. Salma placed the holy water on a table outside. Dia opened the door, seemed delighted to see Salma, and invited her in to talk. Back at Lasri's house, Lasri was crying alone on the sofa. She suddenly heard the sound of sweeping. Only Sumi ever swept at that hour. She cautiously went outside and saw a broom lying on the ground. When she picked it up, she recoiled in horror. The broom bristles were stained with blood. Lasri was terrified. Simultaneously, Salma was confessing everything to Dia. Dia offered seemingly comforting but manipulative advice, suggesting Salma's family didn't care about her. As Dia spoke, Salma glanced outside and saw the holy water. It turned black right before her eyes, and the bottle shattered. Salma knew. Dia dropped the pretense, and Salma saw her true demonic reflection in the glass. The house plunged into darkness. As Dia realized Salma understood the truth, the demon attacked. The room around Salma instantly morphed back into the terrifying, abandoned, dilapidated building Sumi had witnessed. At Lasri's house, the spirit of Sumi appeared behind Lasri, crying out for help. Lasri, screaming, ran. Dia materialized in front of her. Lasri didn't recognize her at first, but as the menacing figure advanced, Lasri realized the horror. Trying to escape, she stumbled and fell down the staircase. Salma, trapped in the nightmare building, began reciting the Ayatul Kursi. The Djinn was closing in, but her faith gave her strength. Through prayer, she managed to find an exit and fled back to her mother-in-law's house. She frantically searched for Arman and Lasri, finding no one. As she ascended the stairs, Dia appeared before her. Salma finally understood. This demon was attempting to isolate and destroy her family. Suddenly, the red-dressed brand ambassador materialized, blocking another path. Then another entity appeared, surrounding Salma. All the figures coalesced into a single terrifying demon. As it lunged at her, Salma cried out to God. The Djinn screamed and vanished. Salma ran out of the house into the pouring rain. Confused and alone, she decided to seek refuge with Indri. She arrived at Indri's house, begging for help, saying she couldn't go to the madrasa alone. She asked Indri to drive her there, sobbing that she didn't know where her husband was. Indri calmed her down, sat her at the dining table, and gave her water. Salma's eyes fell upon a familiar object, Arman's lighter. Could Arman be here? While Indri stepped away to fetch a towel, Salma began searching the house. Suddenly, a soaking wet Arman emerged. Salma was consumed by rage. Her suspicions were true, she thought. Arman was cheating. He and Indri were together. Arman desperately tried to explain. He had found Lasri unconscious after her fall, taken her to the hospital, and had simply come to Indri's house to get clean clothes and freshen up. But Salma wouldn't listen. She blamed Indri for everything, launching accusations and insults. Finally, Indri broke. She turned on Salma, calling her selfish. Indri accused Salma of always focusing on herself, never considering the stress Arman was under, his work, his success, his sick mother. Indri yelled that despite all of Arman's sacrifices, Salma still constantly suspected him. In a blind rage, Salma slapped Indri. She told Arman that if she was so selfish, he should just divorce her. Arman tried one last time to reason with her, but it was useless. Salma rushed out, hailed a taxi, and sped away. Arman ran after her, knowing exactly where she was headed. She went straight to the madrasa. There, Hassan explained the full reality. The Dasim Djinn was targeting her marriage. This specific Djinn causes discord in relationships, ensuring it receives the harshest punishment in the afterlife. Hassan speculated that someone had used the stolen pages of the book to target Salma. He didn't know the culprit, but he assured her that everything she experienced was misunderstanding orchestrated by the Djinn. He had a solution. Hassan asked Salma to perform wudu, ritual cleansing. As she performed the cleansing, Arman arrived. Seeing him, Salma softened. Though she said nothing, her anger dissipated. Hassan, Arman, and several students from the madrasa began preparing for a ruqya, exorcism. Salma sat among them as they began reciting prayers. The cursed pages flashed again. The Djinn materialized before Salma and possessed her instantly. Salma was lifted into the air. Everyone was terrified. The Djinn threw the people away from Salma, laughing maniacally. The glowing script on the pages intensified, boosting the Djinn's power. Hassan intervened, placing his dagger near Salma's head to control the spirit. Through powerful recitations, they managed to bring her back down. The Djinn, speaking through Salma, seemed momentarily subdued and cried out to Arman for help. Arman instinctively stepped forward, but Hassan stopped him. Hassan moved to check if Salma was truly free. Immediately, the blessed water near them turned black, and the Djinn, using Salma's strength, plunged a piece of wood into Hassan's foot. Hassan was wounded, but the Djinn wasn't finished. It attacked Hassan again. Arman tried to intervene, and the Djinn turned its fury on him. It laughed wickedly, pinned Arman to the ground, and horrifyingly began to lick Arman's face with its unnaturally long tongue. The entire room watched in ghastly shock. The Djinn, speaking through Salma, demanded to know if Arman still loved the other woman. Arman wept. Hassan, recovering, placed his hand on Salma's head and resumed his prayers. Finally, the Djinn erupted from Salma's body as smoke, and she collapsed, unconscious. Arman cried over Salma, desperate for her to wake up. Then he saw the blood. Salma was bleeding, a critical sign. They rushed her to the hospital. Make sure you hit that subscribe twiden su white twang twide button so you don't miss out on the final jaw-dropping twist of this horror story. In the hospital, Arman and Lasri sat by Salma. When Salma woke, she learned the devastating news. She had lost the baby. Heartbroken, she was shattered. Arman comforted her, urging her to remain patient and trust in God's mercy. Salma quietly accepted the loss of her child and began to cry. Several months passed. We see a serene scene at Salma and Arman's new house. Family, including Lasri and Hassan, gathered. Indri was also present. Salma immediately sought out Indri and apologized. She realized she had completely overreacted that night. Arman truly had taken Lasri to the hospital and only gone to Indri's house to change his wet clothes. Indri also apologized for her harsh words, and their friendship was restored. Hassan addressed the gathering, offering advice on maintaining a beautiful marital relationship based on Islamic principles. Dika was also there. Hassan then led a blessing ceremony. During the prayers, Indri suddenly felt unwell. She told Salma she needed to use the washroom. Salma directed her to the master washroom, attached to their bedroom. Indri went upstairs alone, but she did not use the toilet. Instead, she went to the drawer. She retrieved the lost earring, the one Salma had found. Indri was holding the matching earring, proving she had planted the first one. The chilling realization hit. Indri was behind everything. We now understand why Hassan noted Indri was absent on Salma's wedding day. Hassan had tried to invite Indri to prior prayer ceremonies, but she always refused to participate. She used the rain as an excuse to leave early during the ceremony at Lasri's house. Indri was the person who stole those pivotal pages from the ancient book on the day of the wedding, using them to conjure the black magic. The story never explicitly reveals if Indri was an ordinary jealous human or if she was the Djinn itself. Perhaps she was jealous of Salma, or perhaps she secretly desired Arman. The horror was still unfolding. Indri placed a small doll, a conduit for the Djinn, in a hiding spot beneath the wash basin in Salma's new home. She finished her wicked task and looked into the mirror. A grotesque, horrifying smile stretched across her face. Her reflection completely shifted, revealing a menacing, demonic entity. Whether Indri was a jealous woman using dark magic or the Djinn itself, the outcome remains open. The story ends here, but hints strongly that a second part is coming. What do you think Indri's true motives were? Was she the Dasim Djinn, or just a deeply jealous friend? Let me know your predictions for the next part of the story in the comments below. We'll keep an eye out for part 2. Until then, stay safe, and may your relationships remain blessed.